All right, looks like we are after noon, so we'll get started. My name is Dan Shriak. I'm the Senior Assistant County Engineer for Burleigh County and current ASHE President. I'll just do a couple announcements before we get on our presentation today. PDH requests can be sent over to Eli Ulmer. His email address is eulmer@nd.gov. A meeting question and answer is available. If you have any questions, type them in there. Eli will moderate and ask the questions throughout and at the end of the presentation. Our next meeting will be February 9th, and our speaker will be Wheeler. They'll be talking about pre-lam bridges. Now with the announcements out of the way, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Baird Bream with Cambridge Systematics. Baird will be speaking on North Dakota's long-range transportation plan today. So take it away, Baird.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. As they said, my name is Baird Bream. I'm with Cambridge Systematics, the project team for the North Dakota DOT Long-Range Transportation Plan, known as Transportation Connection. Today, I'd like to walk you through essentially how we're putting Transportation Connection together, what it's designed to achieve, and dive into a few of the special tools that we've developed for the planning effort, namely our scenario planning exercise and our funding and performance tool, before showing you some of what we've put together so far for Transportation Connection. So we'll dive right in. So the question a lot of folks ask when we start off on this is essentially, why should we plan? What's the purpose of a long-range transportation plan? The first and foremost opportunity is really more of a requirement than an opportunity, let's be honest. This is a federally required document that's necessary in order for the state to remain eligible for federal funding. However, there's a lot of opportunity that comes along with it to identify the trends, challenges, and opportunities that are emerging and develop strategies and policies that allow us to respond to those and take advantage of some of those opportunities to better position North Dakota to maintain its transportation system effectively. We're also taking this as an opportunity to build on the previous long-range transportation plan, which was last developed in 2012 and updated in 2018. Where we're trying to strengthen the public and stakeholder engagement, build in a more robust performance measurement approach that aligns with other NDDOT activities, and define some clear implementation actions. So we see Transportation Connection as a statewide plan to address all transportation issues and provide a common framework for NDDOT and its planning partners at all levels of government throughout the state. This is designed to set vision, goals, and strategies for the next 25 years of transportation planning in North Dakota. We want it to be comprehensive of all modes and all systems and provide clear strategic guidance to where NDDOT directs its investments, where it tries to see improvements throughout the transportation system, and how NDDOT can be responsive to some of the emerging trends and challenges that we see both within the state and outside of the state that are nevertheless influencing things like the state's economy, including the energy and agriculture sector, or its demographics, or the emerging technologies that are available. Our goals are to build a plan that coordinates with state, regional, tribal, and local planning partners. Again, we understand that the North Dakota transportation system is owned and controlled by a lot of different players. You have local roads interacting with state roads, interacting with U.S. highways and interstates. But the idea is we provide a similar framework for everyone to help understand the different priorities and issues and build a network that's truly seamless. We want to connect with a wide variety of audiences, try to reach more people throughout North Dakota to get them involved with this planning process, and help tell the story of transportation in North Dakota. The transportation system is something that people use every day, but they can really kind of take for granted until something goes wrong. So we want to use Transportation Connection as a way to help people understand what transportation means to them and see the value within this system. We also want to understand customer expectations and priorities for different components of their transportation system, everything from the quality and condition of the roads they drive on to the different services they use when they register their vehicles or renew their licenses. We also want to gauge the willingness to pay and the desired performance that people want from their transportation system to understand what the kind of public appetite is for seeing improvements in their transportation system. This graphic on the right-hand slide shows the relationship between transportation connection and the different strategic plans and operational plans that NDDOT maintains. And as you can see, while the strategic business plan oversees all of this, kind of governing all the different aspects of NDDOT operations and administration, we really want the long-range transportation plan to drive a lot of the decision making and inform a lot of the decision making all the way down to project implementation. As a quick note, I want to call attention to our Directors Advisory Council and really thank them for their participation and support in Transportation Connection. As you can see, we've got a wide array of stakeholder groups represented on the Directors Advisory Council, everything from other state government agencies down to local and regional government representation. We have nonprofits, we have trade associations, we have Minot Air Force Base, the Petroleum Council, and the Pipeline Development Authority. All these different organizations that are designed to allow us to capture that wide array of perspectives and get as many different voices involved in this as possible. The Directors Advisory Council has met several times throughout the development of Transportation Connection to help inform the activities that we use to deliver Transportation Connection. To that end, just want to give a quick overview of what our methodology was. So we have been involved in a pretty active public and stakeholder engagement process with a wide array of stakeholder groups throughout this life cycle. We had originally envisioned doing a very kind of in-depth, on-the-ground effort that would have put us in county fairs and town fairs throughout North Dakota over the summer. Obviously, with the impacts of COVID, the cancellation of a lot of those events, we've pivoted to a wholly online strategy, which has still been very successful in terms of reaching audiences and getting them involved. At the same time, we've been looking at the requirements and the best practices for long-range transportation planning to ensure that this is a more cutting-edge plan that really is at the forefront of transportation planning. We've been using scenario development and scenario planning exercise that we'll take a look at a little later to respond to the different trends and drivers of change that we see influencing North Dakota that will ultimately have pretty significant impacts on its transportation network. We're now moving into the planning process where we're actually developing these strategies and ensuring that they are aligned with other agencies' goals and objectives, as well as the overall direction of the state as the new legislative session starts up. And then finally in the spring, we'll be thinking through the transition process of how we turn this plan into a more active document that NDDOT and its partners can continue to reference and engage with over the next few years, and ideally throughout the 25-year plan life cycle, although of course we recognize Transportation Connection will be updated on a regular basis like all long-range transportation plans. So this is a quick overview of how we put Transportation Connection together. We started back in winter 2020 with some initial coordination and a public launch, including a dedicated website on the NDDOT webpage. I'm sorry, a dedicated webpage on the NDDOT website. We then initiated partner engagement in the spring, really working with our DAC to identify opportunities to speak kind of one-on-one with partner organizations. We then rolled out a series of public surveys, tools, and other types of media, again, many of which have been based on our webpage, but have been extensively promoted throughout the branded Transportation Connection social media accounts. Over the summer, we also engaged in some scenario planning exercises, including facilitated walkthrough exercises with different stakeholder organizations to help think about the different futures that North Dakota could be facing and how they can address those appropriately. In the fall, we also started some discussions on how to pay for transportation in North Dakota using the funding and performance tool that we'll show later. As of this month, we have drafted our first cut at Transportation Connection. It's going through an internal review process with NDDOT, but will be finalized in kind of Q1 2021 for public review and comment. So I want to transition now to talking a bit about our public engagement. We've been very pleased with the level of engagement that we've seen. As I said, we've been running a robust public engagement process for several months, and we're really pleased with the results that we've seen with nearly 4,000 engagements, or 3,800 more accurately, likes and reactions on social media, to over 1,300 unique website visitors, and just under 2,000 views of the online tools. We've also seen over nearly 1,300 unique online survey responses across our different surveys. And we're really pleased to see this, because what this says to us is that thousands of North Dakotans are taking it upon themselves to respond to these opportunities to, take their own free time and give us feedback on what transportation means to them and what they want to see out of their transportation system. One of the statistics that we're the proudest of is that nearly 50% of respondents have indicated that they were not previously engaged with a transportation planning effort before. So this is, new voices that were previously not part of the transportation planning discussion that are now contributing to the effort. So what we want to do now is change tactics a little bit. I'm going to ask you folks to go to www.menti.com and enter the code you see here, 8093833. I'll give everyone a minute to pull that up. And then what I will do is actually walk you through some of the public engagement questions that we've posed through our engagement activities, and give you an opportunity to share your thoughts as well. All right. So if everyone has gone to this website and entered in the code, again, the code is 8093833. You can start responding to the question as it comes up. And this first question is, describe what transportation means to you in 3 words. Feel free to just enter your responses. We'll give just a minute here for folks to enter. All right, this is great. We're seeing some words pop up. The different size of the words indicates essentially the number of people who have submitted that particular word. And yeah, we're getting great responses, definitely consistent with what we've seen with this activity before. This focus on travel and safety really addresses the fundaments of transportation. People use them to travel from point A to point B, and they want it to be safe, they want it to be reliable, they want to know that the system they use today will be there tomorrow, and that they'll be able to complete their trip safely. But then we also see the word economy pop up, or movement, connection, business, and there's the indication of the linkage between the transportation system itself and the role that transportation plays. So it isn't just people traveling, it's people going to their jobs, it's people going shopping, taking kids to school, really contributing to the flow of the economy, and that's really critical for us to understand about where transportation fits in to people's daily lives. So we'll move to the next slide. This next question asks, how is the state transportation system working? You can agree or disagree with each of the statements listed here. So the first statement, North Dakota maintains its transportation system in a state of good repair. The roads and bridges are in good condition. Second statement, North Dakota uses an effective asset management system to maintain the useful life of its infrastructure. This statement indicates, obviously, that North Dakota has a process in place for ensuring that they maintain their system on a regular basis, that they have that kind of life cycle approach to ensure that we get the most out of our system's useful life. Third statement, North Dakota uses industry-leading design standards for resiliency. This is trying to be mindful of the impact that weather events or other types of disasters can have on the quality and the condition of roads and bridges, and it essentially tries to account for that risk in the actual design of the infrastructure. The next statement, North Dakota's transportation system supports local communities and main streets. Obviously, that the transportation system doesn't just connect our kind of major activity centers, but really allows for accessibility and mobility throughout the state, that all communities have ready access to these to the system and its connections to markets, to hospitals, to shopping, to schools. People can get where they need to go. Next system, North Dakota's transportation system supports businesses and major industries. By that we mean that the transportation system is aligned with essentially the goals of the economy, that it's a good tool for economic development. And finally, North Dakota's transportation system is utilizing new technology to make transportation better, safer, and easier. Essentially, that North Dakota is being an innovator. All right, so we've got a good number of responses coming in, and we see a pretty strong agreement with the maintaining the system in a state of good repair and supporting businesses and major industries. We're pleased to see that. Again, obviously, knowing that the system is in a good condition is fundamental to that safety and reliability, but then also contextualizing the system within the broader economy is really essential as well. So we're glad to see those responses. What are the most significant transportation issues facing North Dakota today? You can select your top 3 issues. So this is thinking about what are the challenges North Dakota is facing when it comes to maintaining its or modernizing or building upon its transportation system. Give a minute for responses to come in, but essentially we tried to align it with that previous question, thinking about both what North Dakota does well and where North Dakota can improve. So fixing what we have, being safe, supporting economies, paying for transportation, building communities, and getting around. And I see responses coming in. I am not sure why we're not getting responses on the slide. I'm sorry about that. Oh, there we go. Just a lag, sorry about that. All right, very interesting to see these results. I'm particularly excited to see such a high ranking for paying for transportation, because that's really what the funding and performance tool that we'll take a look at later is really all about, is trying to understand trying to help people understand how North Dakota pays for its transportation system and what some of the challenges related to that may be. So we'll move right ahead. Over the next 25 years, how important do you believe each of the following focus areas should be for North Dakota? So essentially, you can rearrange these statements in order to rank or order them based on declining importance in your perspective. So the first focus area is enhancing safety for all travelers. Second, creating livable, healthy, and sustainable communities. Third, supporting economic development and industry. Fourth, encouraging technology and innovation in transportation. Fifth, considering public health, equity, and air quality. Sixth, expanding multimodal travel options and choices. And seventh, addressing congestion, delay, and reliability. So again, we're still trying to maintain that consistency with some of the previous questions so that we can see how attitudes are changing between, essentially what North Dakota does well, where it can improve, and what are the kind of critical issues to think about improving over the future. So we'll just give a minute for responses to come in. All right, so the results that we're getting so far are very interesting. We're seeing safety out there in front. Again, that's consistent with the feedback you've been giving us and what we've seen in our previous planning efforts, but more balance between a lot of these other focus areas. Livable, healthy communities, economic development and industry, and technology and innovation are all pretty close to each other. And that makes sense because obviously those three are very closely related. Especially as technology becomes such a growth opportunity for the economy as a whole, and recognizing that a lot of the technologies that are emerging in the transportation sector have pretty significant economic implications. Something like autonomous or connected vehicles has pretty transformative opportunities for freight and logistics. So thinking about them in conjunction makes a lot of sense. All right, this is one question that we wanted to pose specifically to ASHE because we really want your expertise in this. Over the next 25 years, what is the biggest challenge to maintaining the transportation network in a state of good repair? Is it the asset management programs, the infrastructure design standards, the construction materials, the emerging infrastructure technology, or the project management processes? So we really wanted to ensure that we're seeing as many different perspectives on the issue of state of good repair as possible. I'll just give a minute for feedback to come in. All right, responses are pretty balanced so far, but we do see emerging infrastructure technology pulling slightly ahead. So again, thinking about that innovation opportunity, how the new technologies like intelligent transportation systems can be incorporated into the transportation network to ensure that NDDOT and its planning partners have the information they need about transportation system demand and conditions in order to make the best investment decisions. That's good to see. All right, we are going to pause right here. We'll return to Menti a little bit later, but I want to transition back to the slideshow right now and walk through a bit more content with you all. So these next few slides just show some of the feedback that we were getting from the public during this exercise. So again, this word bubble shows really a compilation of our different planning exercises with the public to get their feedback on what transportation in a word means. And again, we see safety, mobility as major issues, showing that fundamental focus, but recreation, connection, movement, convenience, they show that contextualization of the transportation system in terms of how people use it and what it means to them. When we asked people about the most significant transportation issues facing North Dakota today, we have fixing what we have in the lead. So again, it really shows that people want to prioritize that condition of their infrastructure to ensure that it remains safe and reliable for them. But right behind that, we see safety and supporting economic development as significant issues as well. So safety still focused on the fundamentals, but the supporting economies starts to link the transportation system to how people use it and what it means to them. When we ask for their input on the focus areas over the future, again, safety's out there in front. People still want to make sure that they can just use the system each day and get home safely. But we also start to see the linkages between community development and economic development. So recognizing that the transportation system and its ability to connect different communities together, to connect them to domestic and international markets, are really critical to supporting economic growth and maintaining the livelihood of these communities.
Hey Bart, it's Eli. Just quickly, can you put the presentation in a bigger view so our audience can see that better?
Oh, absolutely. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Is this better for everyone?
Yep, that'll work.
Great, thank you. My apologies. So these are just some general comments that we've received, and we are really pleased to see the diversity and the sophistication of the comments we got. Everything from from trying to move towards technological innovation with connected vehicles, to addressing the fundamentals of just finding more funding for transportation. But we also see the diversity of comments as well in terms of people wanting to see rural infrastructure improved versus people trying to call for main streets in smaller towns. They're by no means in conflict, but it does show the variety of priorities that exist among the public. We also see the recognition of growing trends that are changing things over time, like the growing senior population needing alternative transportation options when they are no longer able to drive. So we want to move now into the scenario planning exercise that I mentioned earlier. The scenario planning exercise is an effort to try to understand how the future may change. We recognize that essentially we can't predict the future perfectly. We need to anticipate uncertainty within these different drivers of change related to the economy, development trends, demographic trends, technological innovation that allow us to essentially think differently about the transportation network, to try to assess how it may change over time. And also to recognize that change may not happen uniformly. We might see different trends emerge that require us to essentially borrow from different scenarios and ultimately apply a wider array of strategies in order to be as responsive to the needs and opportunities of the transportation network as it evolves. So we are thinking about drivers of change in North Dakota. We see a real wide array of opportunity. Everything from changes in the economic sectors and business structures, where recent changes in oil and energy, energy and agriculture may lead to changes in the actual makeup of the businesses that are drilling for oil or are growing the wheat and harvesting it, to the demographic shifts that North Dakota, has seen a lot of population growth recently. It became a younger state as a result, and just trying to think how those shifts could influence North Dakota in the future if those younger folks stick around, form families, and essentially create more sustainable demographic growth for transportation in the area. We also see tremendous technological innovation, everything from the use of drones for simple package delivery or inspection services to the embedded sensors and intelligent transportation systems along the actual roadway or the traffic signal systems, all of which can just generate a massive amount of data for NDDOT and its planning partners to incorporate into their planning processes and use it for more precise decision making. So we've taken a look at these different drivers of changes and trends and come up with essentially 4 main scenarios that we foresee as potential scenarios for North Dakota: the rural renaissance, the cities and centers, the smart and connected, and the ghost towns. So the rural renaissance scenario asks what happens to North Dakota if the rural areas become communities of choice in the future, where we see energy and agriculture continue to maintain a huge footprint in the state and really become the kind of center for spun-off value-added agriculture or value-added or local energy generation in smaller communities that ultimately allow local communities to diversify their economies and become more distributed activity centers. The inverse scenario is the cities and centers scenario, where we ask what happens if the urban areas really just increase their footprint and become the centers of the state, both demographically and economically, where we see the economy diversify into the professional and technical services that often serve these urban areas. And even though energy and agriculture remain important, they're no longer seen as kind of the main drivers. They're more just the specialized industries of North Dakota that bring people there before they diversify and branch out into other sectors. The ghost town scenario is the negative scenario that we include in this effort to essentially identify and define the risks that North Dakota needs to avoid in order to maintain its growth and manage its growth. Under this scenario, we see economic declines in the energy and agricultural sectors, leading to essentially ripple effects throughout the economy that reverse the population growth that North Dakota has seen as people essentially leave the state to seek jobs elsewhere. The final scenario is the smart and connected scenario, where essentially we see rapid innovation in technology, not just for transportation, but really for all forms of technology. So telehealth and telemedicine, home-based schooling and education, remote learning, all of these things just really unlock the potential to live and work in new configurations, while at the same time transportation technologies emerge to make it much easier and more efficient to get around the state using multiple modes or multiple technologies. So we want to go back to that scenario, back to menti.com, entering that access code again to ask some questions about these scenarios. So again, please return to menti.com and use the access code 8093833. We'll be pulling this up in just a second. Just need to skip ahead to the right slide. Just a second, please. All right, I see some of you have already started to respond to this. That's great. Essentially, what we want you to consider here is how the transportation needs will change in a more rural scenario. Will we see more freight and deliveries in more areas? Will road and bridge conditions worsen as more people are driving in rural areas that historically haven't seen a lot of traffic? Will we see more dependence on personal vehicles as the population disperses? Will there be more emphasis on economic development as we try to essentially get these small areas to catch up and diversify? Will we see safety and security needs increase, that as population disperses, we might have more natural hazard impacts, which require more safety infrastructure to be built? Will we see more trips and longer travel times as people are scattered throughout the state? And will community and public health concerns grow as people remain in places that may have a lower public health infrastructure? We'll give just a minute for some more responses to come in. All right, very interesting results. So yep, we can see a lot of these potential impacts are driven by that rural population movement that sees more activity in the rural areas and increases transportation demand in areas that historically have seen pretty low demand. So these rural roads, these gravel roads, may all of a sudden have much higher traffic volumes, and the state needs to play catch up to address the freight movement, the increased number of vehicles. It definitely points to a shift in travel demand that's really important to accommodate. We'll move on to the next one and essentially ask you to respond to transportation needs changing in the cities and centers scenario where everything is more urban. Will we see less dependence on personal vehicles? Will there be a growth in transit, walking, and new mobility options within these cities and centers? Will we see an increase in freight and deliveries happening both in volume and in frequency as potentially more people are ordering or doing online shopping and expecting things to come to them? Will we see an increase in travel congestion and delays? Will there be increased safety and security needs? Will natural hazard impacts be more severe because of the concentration of activity in these areas, leading to essentially more intensive use on roadways, or more intensive development in areas that historically have been floodplains? Will we see greater demand for technology and data systems as, again, cities and centers have the expectation that they, or the demand for more data to inform traffic operations planning? And finally, will we see community and public health concerns grow as the cities and centers become more concentrated and you have potentially more inflow immigration diversified across different sectors, different economic strata that ultimately have varying health needs? All right, very interesting responses. The increase in travel congestion and delays partners very well with the demand for technology and data systems. Essentially, as these urban areas see more activity, more regular traffic flow, increased volumes, there will emerge the opportunity to deploy intelligent transportation systems to try to address them. That's great to see those two happening in conjunction. But we also see, similarly with that congestion and delay, a demand for potentially more transit, walking, and alternative modes. People realize they don't need to sit in traffic all the time. They want to think of alternative ways to get around. Great to see. Our next question, how might future transportation needs change in a more challenging scenario? This is essentially trying to think about what would happen if the ghost towns were to occur. Would we see less freight and delivery movements due to failing economic conditions? Would road and bridge conditions worsen as there's less revenue to sustain them? Will the state would the state rather have to put more emphasis on economic development in order to try to stave off economic losses? Would we see safety and security needs increase potentially as economic conditions lead to worsening social conditions and crime rates increase? Will natural hazard impacts be more severe as the roads and bridges deteriorate and essentially we just have systems that are less well maintained and more vulnerable? Will there be more reliance on public transit and shared transport as it becomes expensive or difficult to own your own vehicle? Will we see community and public health concerns grow as, again, failing economic conditions means worsening social conditions? Alternatively, will there be more dependence on personal vehicles as cities and communities lose the ability to fund alternative modes? We'll give just a minute for responses to come in. Okay, very interesting responses. We see a lot of balance among the perceived likelihood for these different challenges. It definitely speaks to the fact that this scenario would create problems in multiple directions for the state to respond to. But good to see that emphasis on economic development kind of leading the fray. That suggests a recognition that, you know, the state will have to respond to the ghost towns in a more active and positive way in order to stimulate development. So our last question asks the same question about changing transportation needs, but this time in a technological scenario. Essentially asking, if all these different innovations occur, what might we see? Will we see more freight more frequently and delivered with different modes, including something like drones? Will we see more reliance on data and information for transportation decision making? Will new modes and new systems be developed? Everything from autonomous vehicles to autonomous flying taxis. Will we see traffic safety improve as a result of these new technological options? If vehicles can speak to each other, are they going to have an easier time avoiding each other? Will natural hazard impacts be less severe, perhaps due to better weather forecasting that allows different design standards, or allows us to reroute traffic more effectively when weather incidents occur? Will we see a greater use of shared or private transportation options as this new technology kind of unlocks new mobility solutions? Will we see community and public health concerns grow as a result of potentially, again, this increased activity leading to perhaps better health information about the public, so we try to respond to issues more proactively, but it does require more investment on that kind of public health infrastructure. Will there be more trips happening more frequently? Again, as essentially the ease of getting around increases, will people decide to take more recreational trips in autonomous vehicles, or just travel for the pleasure of it? All right, very interesting responses. Again, that it comes back to that reliance on data and information. The expectation that all this new technology creates more opportunity for NDDOT and its planning partners to be actively learning from the transportation system, to be gathering that data and using it to inform their decision making for planning and operations. All right, so thank you for your feedback on that. That was extremely helpful, and I look forward to dissecting that further. We are going to return quickly to the slide deck before I take you to one of the funding and performance tool that we've developed, because we're very pleased with it. And there's one part in particular that we want to show you in your capacity as engineers, because it's our attempt to drive a clearer linkage between the performance of the transportation system and the level of investment we give to that. So essentially what we've done with this funding and performance tool is try to tell the story of how transportation is funded in North Dakota, really making it personal to people to actually ask them to calculate how much they contribute in fuel taxes and registration fees based on the age of their vehicle and the amount they drive. We then provide context for how much they pay compared to how much the average resident pays in other states. We also provide some context on how much transportation projects cost in order to lead into explaining why North Dakota faces funding challenges. And this is the fundamental challenge that so many states are facing, which is that since gas taxes are levied on a per gallon basis and fuel efficiency has been increasing, it means that essentially the amount of revenue coming into the transportation system remains static even as people drive more. And this is obviously exacerbated by the fact that state fuel taxes and federal fuel taxes haven't been increased for several years. So you see that gap between the amount of revenue available and the amount of travel demand, creating travel need and essentially transportation infrastructure need continuing to increase. We then introduce some alternative funding options and ask people to, now that they've thought about those funding challenges, are they willing to pay for additional funds? We then show them how NDDOT essentially distributes its state and federal funding across different investment areas each year, and then gives the survey taker the opportunity to set their own priorities and see how the expectations they set for their transportation system aligns with the amount they currently pay, or rather aligns with the amount of funding that's currently available, and if they were to change that amount of funding, how that would impact their personal contributions. So we built this in an interactive web funding tool that I want to show to you quickly. This is the funding and performance tool investment trade-off tool, where essentially we ask people to set expectations for the different investment areas that NDDOT is responsible for. So for each of these, they can set their expectations for certain performance levels, and what they see is a different investment outcome at each expectation or performance, and a different level of investment as a result. So if they want to see their roads quickly cleared to 2 hours to clear the road after heavy snowfall, they set a higher performance indicator, and they see that the total investment increases significantly. This can be done for each of these investment areas to essentially indicate where their preference lies. And what they see is that setting each level increases the total investment across the different investment areas and compares it to essentially the amount of funding that North Dakota DOT currently has available. And as a result, they can see that the investment total can either be greater or less than the available budget that North Dakota DOT has available. And as a result of that, they see that either an increase or a decrease in their monthly contributions. And that amount, that increase or decrease in monthly contributions, then carries over to their funding preferences, where essentially they see that their expectations create a change in the amount of funding. And if they try to meet that monthly contributions, they would have to adjust the state fuel tax or the state registration fees. And if they were to do that, they get to see how much more revenue they generate from these adjustments, and then see what that monthly contribution would be. So if they had wanted essentially $10.34 more in performance out of their transportation system, they have to adjust this by a significant amount in order, well, not quite that significant, in order to get close to that. So they need to be prepared to pay more to see these revenue sources increase in order to get the level of performance they want. We encourage all of you to check out the funding and performance tool. It's still open, it's still live. You can play around with it. It's based on NDDOT's internal performance management tools. So the data is essentially what NDDOT is working with right now. It's simplified a little bit in terms of the investment categories in order to be a little bit more accessible to the public, and essentially just clarify what each of these investment areas means for them. But again, the performance that lies behind it is accurate to current conditions. So it's a great opportunity for people to try to make that connection between, again, what they want out of their system, how much funding there is available to achieve that performance outcome, and then what more would be necessary from the existing revenue sources in order to achieve that. So we'll hop back here and keep going through the funding and performance tool. And what we're pleased that the responses to the public for the questions, these questions here that are embedded in the funding and performance tool have received pretty positive responses. So the first question asks people to essentially to contextualize whether their monthly contribution seems fair. Because when we give people the opportunity to calculate how much they pay per month in transportation user fees, we ask them to say, does this seem fair to you? And what we see is that, you know, nearly 40% of people say it's not fair to them. And when we dissect that further, they say over 60% of people say that they pay too little in the system. So essentially, what they feel that what they pay into it does not sustain the system at the level they want. We see that as a great opportunity for understanding willingness to pay and encouraging an attitude of increased investment in North Dakota. We ask people to think about how they should pay for transportation, potential alternatives to the current transportation funding environment. The three icons listed at the bottom of the slide are actually three different funding tools that we share with or that we present in the funding and performance tool to help people understand potential alternatives that other states either currently use or may consider. And we ask people to think about essentially the different opportunities, the different ways to raise money for the transportation system as an alternative to current conditions. And we're pleased to see a high level of response to paying for transportation based on the wear and tear that is caused to roads and bridges, or based on how much people drive, essentially how much transportation system they consume. What we see with the high responses there is a pretty direct connection between one's use of the transportation system and one's impact on the transportation system, and a desire to link those two. Again, it shows a clear understanding of transportation demand and transportation consumption, and then transportation investment. That's definitely a positive result for this study. We then asked people to indicate where they want to see funding change in these different investment areas. And obviously, you see a very high level of response for increase in transportation funding for road and bridge maintenance. We're not surprised by that. Again, road and bridge maintenance has been a consistently high priority throughout these different engagement activities. So seeing demand for that as a priority area is a positive indicator. But we also see a high call for investment in system safety and also alternative transportation modes. Those kind of round out several of the priority areas. Finally, within the funding survey, we see a high response for increasing transportation funding in general, where there's a high level of enthusiasm for additional funding in transportation, and not only for additional funding, but essentially in the options we presented to people, sort of high funding increase versus a low funding increase versus a low funding decrease versus a high funding decrease. We see a majority of responses consistently for the higher funding increase option. Again, a very positive sign that we take as a willingness among the public to see greater investment in their transportation network. So I know we're running low on the amount of time remaining. In the last few minutes, just want to share with you some of the components of Transportation Connection that we've developed so far. So this is a quick overview of what Transportation Connection will contain. Again, it's that higher level overview of the strategies and policies that NDDOT will use to maintain and improve its transportation system. So we set goals and objectives to essentially organize NDDOT's activities. We define strategic initiatives that are designed to respond to the issues and needs, while also taking advantage of the trends and opportunities. And then we set some clear language around how those results will be measured, the actions that NDDOT will take, as well as those that they will look for support on from their partners. And then we also give some clear indication for how the plan will be implemented and delivered. So first and foremost, the next 25 years of transportation require a clear vision and solid goals to guide these activities. Our vision, which was developed in conjunction both with our project advisory team and our Directors Advisory Council, is delivering a safe, innovative, and connected future. So again, we see that safety being first and foremost the priority for NDDOT, but we don't just strive to maintain the system as it is. We want to build on it with innovation and greater connection. So we see an opportunity to link the state further together and use new technologies to deliver that. Our goals are to keep you safe, care for what we have, connect to North Dakota, help you get there, and invest for the future. And again, we're trying to create that balanced approach to transportation that not only maintains the system in a good condition to maintain that safety and reliability, but we also see the opportunity to make further connections to reach more people, provide more options, roll out tools to help people get there that make the system smarter, that make it more accessible. And then we bundle all that together under a strategy to invest for the future, taking lessons learned from the funding and performance tool and the scenario planning exercise to ensure that North Dakota has a sustainable system for funding and maintaining its transportation. So each goal is supported by several strategies. We won't walk through all of these now, but essentially what we try to show is a balanced approach to the different strategies, looking both at NDDOT planning, as well as operations, as well as administration, as well as technology, really across all of these, to try to ensure that we are being as balanced and as comprehensive as possible. So safety involves everything from safety education to actual safety infrastructure and new technologies. Caring for what we have involves a more robust routine and preventive maintenance program, while also being proactive about reducing infrastructure risk with new design standards or new concepts of weather resiliency. Connecting North Dakota means really driving that economic development and community development strategy forward with a series of a series of activities that really think critically about where goods are flowing, where people are moving, both within the state and externally. So recognizing the linkages between the North Dakota transportation system and national, international, global markets is a critical component of that. But it also means factoring in North Dakota's excellent natural resources and recreational facilities as a huge driver of quality of life and also tourism, and ensuring reliable connection to that. Helping you get there is where we start to see some of these tools get rolled out with new traveler services, new transportation options and access, and also just making information more widely available and accessible to really help people make the best decisions about how to travel, on what mode, when, and essentially just what they can rely on in order to maximize the safety and reliability of their own trip. Investing for the future looks both internally at NDDOT's own workforce data and technology, but also looks externally towards the services, travel information, and infrastructure investments that NDDOT will be making. And then it ensures all of that is supported by a more sustainable and responsible funding framework. And that not only thinks critically about the different funding opportunities that NDDOT can pursue, but also thinks about where those investments get made, and can NDDOT really ensure that it's driving towards projects that maximize the return on investment. So looking ahead to the last few months of the project, we are, as I said, we have drafted much of the content, and we'll be revising it as we get more information from decisions made by the state legislature. Beginning in February and then moving into March, we'll be getting feedback from a variety of stakeholders and the public on transportation connection, looking both to have facilitated review sessions with some of our partners, including the MPOs, because they've been a pretty active partner throughout this project, but then also facilitating with other state, local, and regional agencies, and then finally having a kind of open public comment period where we get as much feedback as possible from the public. We'll finalize the report in we'll finalize the plan in April, and it will be supported by some additional elements related to implementation, performance, and technical planning, including all the work that we did around public engagement scenario planning in order to kind of really show where all the different components of transportation connection came from and how they came together. But we'll also be pursuing some additional multimedia components to this to, again, help transportation connection reach a much broader audience. In order to get more people involved, we'll be thinking about ways to communicate key takeaways or components of NDDOT's transportation connection through multiple communication channels, such as brief videos, animation, social media posts, etc. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for your time. If you want to get involved, there are links to our different social media accounts and the project webpage listed here. Additionally, we have a dedicated phone number and email account, and you are welcome to contact us there directly. So again, thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Baird. Yeah, we are out of time, but good news, I don't see anything in the Q&A unless something pops up here quick. But thank you again. That was a great presentation, and thanks for all the attendees for your great input. And we'll give it maybe a minute or so here, and then we can wrap up.
And I will say that the funding and performance tool, the scenario planning walkthrough, and our other surveys are all open and accessible on the Transportation Connection webpage, which is linked there, both at the dot.nd.gov website, but also www.transportationconnection.org. Both will work to get you to those materials. And again, they're still open, so we welcome your input and feedback.
Okay, yep, I'm not seeing any questions here. I think we are good to wrap up. Dan, do you got anything else to add?
Nope, just the next meeting is February 9th, and that is all I have.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Baird.
All right, take care, everyone.